Hello viewers, here is Giridhar and you are watching the video podcast Giridhar's Garady. In our podcast first season, 2 years ago, you would have listened to the two episodes on the story of Kashmir that talk about Kashmir's origin, history, culture, food, economy, and the current situations prevailing in the valley. So now you must be wondering what this episode has to offer. Well, as the title says, this episode talks about the film The Kashmir Files, marking 1 year of its release today. Although the film primarily talks about the genocide of Kashmiri Pandits in the valley, I believe it has a lot more information to provide apart from that. It was not only a gripping original story that keeps you hooked till the end, but also a film that offers so many true and realistic facts which were not covered in our previous podcast episodes about Kashmir. So let's see what they are in this episode today, along with my opinions added to them. At the same time, these facts are the reasons why you should watch the movie The Kashmir Files if you haven't yet. Well, let's start with the history of incidents narrated in the film. The film shows how Kashmiri Muslim neighbors deceived the Kashmiri Pandits and how a Kashmiri Muslim tortures a Kashmiri Pandit who happens to be his own teacher. At the same time, it also proves the fact that not all Muslims in Kashmir were against the Hindus. The character Abdul, who saves his friend Shiva, sets the example here. Of course, you could also watch in the second half on how Abdul was brainwashed with rumors on Indian army. This is the truth that is happening even today in Kashmir. The ordinary Kashmiri youth who has hatred against India don't know how Indian army is protecting them in the valley. Instead, they were taught a fake story and a fake propaganda opposite to the reality by the Pakistani sponsored militants. It was shown in the film how the terrorists started calling the Kashmiri Pandits as Indian dogs and raised the slogans convert, leave or die. We as ordinary Indians cannot digest it, but that's the brutal truth. And just imagine what would have been the condition of our Indian Kashmiri Pandits when they had to experience all this. It was repeated multiple times in the film that the incident was not an exodus but a genocide of 5 lakh Kashmiri Pandits all over the valley by not Pakistani militants but by JKLF, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front. The film depicts how police, media, doctors, and even ministers were helpless during the genocide. You could also find how the then government joined hands with the JKLF. The film even talks about Batmazar, the first genocide in Kashmir Valley that took place way back in 14th century during the rule of Sultan Sikandar, wherein all the sacred books of Kashmiri Pandits were thrown into the Dal Lake. The Kashmiri Pandits, over 1 lakh, were drowned in the lake and were burned at a spot in the vicinity of Rainavari in Srinagar city, known as Batmazar. It was also said in the film that no one, like the historians, media, or politicians, etc., have reported the true details of the 1990 genocide in Kashmir so far. The character of Anupam Kher at one point speaks that there was a fatwa issued on his son. What is basically a fatwa? It's a legal opinion of someone called Mufti on a matter of Islamic law. Then who is Mufti? Well, Mufti is an Islamic legal scholar who is capable of pronouncing his judgments, his opinions on any kind of legal issue with respect to Islam. There was an incident shown in the film wherein a Pakistani rupee was given in balance return to the Indian rupees paid for buying vegetables. This again shows how the local youth were simply brainwashed by the Pakistani militants who cross the border every now and then, disguising themselves as Kashmiri Muslims. That's the level of hatred imposed undeveloped. Then there was another incident shown in the film wherein Kashmiri Pandits were termed as kafir, which means infidels, and they were not allowed to take their daily groceries. This is another example of religious hatred spread in Kashmir by Pakistani militants. There was a valid question raised during one of the events shown in the film. It was said that from the time of the Hindu king rulers, Kashmiri Muslims were oppressed despite being in majority, and that oppression led to the current genocide. Here, the question raised was, did Kashmiri Pandits ever pick up the arms anytime during the oppression? The answer was no. In fact, there was the discrimination between them by the then Hindu kings and rulers. But the Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims coexisted peacefully, respecting each other and their religions. Another truth revealed in the film was how the British created the disparity between Hindus and Muslims for their survival. Yes, it was a part of their divide and rule policy in India. One more bold question raised was how did people in India were not aware of the genocide in Kashmir Valley? The infamous answer that we hear was that there were no proper TV channels, internet, etc. during that time. But immediately the next question raised was how did we get to know about the Bhopal gas tragedy, Babri Masjid issue that happened more or less during those years? The actual reason was no media reported the truth about the genocide in the Kashmir Valley. The film simply puts forward the biased nature of media, calling terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda as Islamist militants and organizations like Jaish e Mohammed, Lashkar e Taiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, and JKLF as rebels. Although these organizations aim for Islamic Republic of Kashmir. In fact, after the genocide, it was evident that these are the terrorist organizations and they should be termed in that way. There was another statement made in the film calling the media as a hidden army for the terrorist organizations. And that was proved when the media was shown delivering fake news of the genocide in the Kashmir Valley. It was truly said in the film that no one listened to Kashmiri Pandits that time. And that's the reason they had to live in miserable conditions in Jammu camps. Our hearts bleed when we see in the film how the Kashmiri Pandits, our fellow Indians, had to experience diabetes, sunstroke, hypertension, snake bites, menopause, early menstrual cycle, and die in the Jammu camps all due to the Islamic terrorism and genocide happened in the Kashmir Valley. It was quite surprising to see in the film that the Kashmiri Pandits were given only 600 rupees per month to a family when they were suffering in the Jammu camps. Why didn't the then government try to re-establish the Kashmiri Pandits back in the valley? One ray of hope that happened and even shown in the film was how the Maharashtra Bal Thackeray government gave reservations in education to Kashmiri Pandits and helped them. What would have been the case when even the other states of India had come forward to do something to our fellow Indians, the Kashmiri Pandits? Our hearts would wrench when we see the last scene in the film wherein 24 Kashmiri Pandits, including two children, were brutally killed by Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists who disguised themselves as Indian Army in the village of Nadimak, Pulwama district of Jammu and Kashmir. After the film got released, some people called it fake, but it was clearly reported in the news and the J&K High Court even reopened this case recently. Let's hope at least now the justice is delivered. You would be even surprised to see in the film how a Maulvi asks a Kashmiri Pandit woman to marry him. Don't you think it was in line with their disgusting mentality of their slogan, convert, die or live? What was the mistake of poor Kashmiri Pandits, our fellow Indians who wanted to stay peacefully in the valley? It was strange to see in the film how a Kashmiri Muslim terrorist, Bitta Karate, openly confesses killing 25 Kashmiri Pandits along with IAF officers on TV, and still nobody did anything to him. Did you know he was released on indefinite bail in October 2006 just because the prosecution showed total disinterest in arguing the case? I still wonder what the then government did when I saw in the film that even in the schools, children were taught to ask masjid and the teacher showed Kashmir as different from the map of India. I was even shocked to see in the film that it was the seventh exodus and genocide happened in 1990 in the Kashmir Valley. The film even spoke that it was not only Kashmiri Pandits but also Sikhs, Muslims, Dogra, and even other human beings who went against the terrorists killed in the 1990 genocide, although the main targets were the Kashmiri Pandits. It was true in saying, just as in the film, that the Kashmir soul was killed in the 1990 genocide. It's been a known fact to most of us that cinema halls were closed in the Kashmir Valley due to the militancy, and the same thing was mentioned in the film. However, it's good to know that multiplexes are open now in the valley. Lastly, with respect to the history of incidents, the film talks about Iraqi, who came from Iran, spread Shia Islam, and was responsible for the destruction of many Hindu and Buddhist temples in Kashmir. You can refer to the link here to know more about Iraqi and his role in destruction of Hindu temples in Kashmir. The film The Kashmir Files even talks so many things about the history of culture in Kashmir. You could have listened to the Kashmiri songs sung here and there, like when Krishna's mom lets him sleep and when the Kashmiri Pandits were leaving the valley. I simply fell in love with the language and felt proud that it is one of my country's diverse languages. Not just that, there were even some dialogues in Kashmir language. The film showcases the Kashmiri food, the famous nadru, saying that one who don't know about nadru cannot know anything about Kashmir. Everywhere you could even see the dressing style of Kashmiris in the film that talks a lot about their amazing culture. Talking about the genocide, the film says about the Hindu civilization and culture in Kashmir. You could clearly see the agony of a Kashmiri Pandit in the film, talking about where Lord Shiva, Goddess Saraswati, Rishi Kashyap, Shankaracharya said to believe that's our Kashmir. Even the place where the Panchatantra evolved, that's our Kashmir. Towards the end, the film stresses on the fact that Kashmir was a cradle of civilization, world center of knowledge, and it's our national heritage. You can even witness in the film how it was not only a genocide of people, but also a genocide of culture, Indian architecture, Indian spiritual center, and Indian heritage. There was even history of politics discussed in the film. The film openly talked about the political parties and their strategies, on how they don't let the issue close, and how they always created the fake propaganda that Kashmiris were oppressed by India. You could also see the film talking about the plebiscite during Nehru's time that we have covered in our podcast first season, The Story of Kashmir, in detail. A perfect logic was told in the film with a question: Azadi, freedom. From whom? Kashmir was already free annexing with India. Obviously, whoever opposes it or the Deshdroh, the traitors. Then, for all the audience looking for the answer about the then government's action during the genocide, the film answers by saying that the center simply left Kashmir as if it does not belong to India. It was quite evidently shown in the film how the then J&K government, having its own flag, own constitution, own power, due to existence of Article 370 helped the terrorist organization JKLF Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front during the genocide. Needless to say that it was India who gave the special status with Article 370 to Kashmir, and it's good that now it has been revoked. The film clearly says that terrorism is a mindset, not because of any other reasons like oppression of state or central government. An open secret revealed in the film that politics will lead to destruction and end. Don't you think so? Lastly, the film even talked about the present conditions prevailing in the valley. Kashmiri youth are in confused state, just like the character of Krishna in the film. The truth about Kashmir is so true that it seems to be false. As shown in the film, after the genocide happened, the Kashmiri Pandits became refugees. Can't we feel the same pain as the fellow countrymen? In the beginning of the film, you would have seen the cast talking about the curfew at Habba Kadal even during the present times. A tough question was asked in the film: what is justice? Although the targeted killings are happening even today, the Indian army is taking care of the justice. And we Indians are proud of our army. Recently, during the Republic Day celebrations, Indian flag was hoisted at Lal Chowk, Srinagar. I would say, this is my India. There was one dialogue in the movie about media. If you are ready to be sold, market is always open. This is so true even in the present situation in Valley. An example here is Al Jazeera news channel that presents its biased views about Kashmir. The film says, even today, the stone pelting is just to showcase it to international media that there is unrest in the valley. The correlation with Jews talked in the film was brilliant. Jews didn't let the world forget what happened with them. So should be the Kashmiri Pandits, says a dialogue in the film. You would have seen a character of Kashmiri Pandit in the present situation talking about how he misses his home, his scooter, snow at the home window, etc. This is extremely hard to digest. I thought even similar thing happened with the people of Punjab and Bengal during the partition of India. It's surprising to see in the film that even for college elections, Kashmir issue was kept alive with incorrect propaganda like no internet, lockdown, curfews, etc. But why all this? It was even said in the fake propaganda that there was raw conspiracy and called the terrorists as freedom fighters like Mahatma Gandhi. On the whole, I would say kudos to the entire unit of the film for breaking the truth. Marking 1 year of the release, I would like to recommend every Indian to watch this film for a better understanding of our history, culture, and present situations of Kashmir. That's it for today, viewers. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll be back next week with another interesting subject. See you.